You asked Jim, the Equalities Minister in Westminster, Bridget Phillipson, whether or not the Supreme Court ruling would apply consistently across the whole of the UK, given that we have the Windsor Framework and its human rights provisions, and we'll hear a little bit about that later. What did she say to you in response to that?
Well, she basically said she would write to me. She obviously didn't know the answer straight up. But I think there is a fundamental question here. If we're part of the United Kingdom, then the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, there's no more persuasive authority than that. And if it has correctly said that the basis of sex in the discrimination laws is biological sex, then that is something which any part of the United Kingdom and every part should be following. The fly in the ointment for Northern Ireland, as in so many things, is the fact that we have been left half in, half out under the protocol and subject in Article 2 of the protocol to various EU directives dealing with issues pertaining to discrimination. And that would make us vulnerable to any country ruling by the European Court of Justice as to what those directives mean in terms of talking about men and women. Yeah. And of course, that's but a parallel where we've seen in other cases. We saw in immigration that UK law was overruled. We saw in legacy UK law was overruled. We will yet see it, I believe, in tobacco, where the tobacco directive will overrule the supposedly UK-wide progressive ban on smoking. So all of that comes as the product of a part of the United Kingdom being surrendered to the territory and control of another institution to which we elect no one or have no say over the laws.
So this part of the Windsor Framework, Article 2 as it's known, which deals with the human rights stuff, as you say, that has been consequential. It has featured in some high-profile court cases. You mentioned a couple of them there. But it is clear at this point that there's a great deal of uncertainty about what it will actually mean in regards to this Supreme Court ruling, because it's been hard to get a straight answer from anybody on this. And we have an expert we've recorded, and he doesn't really reach a firm conclusion on this either. So have you any sense about how long it's going to take for Bridget Phillipson to write back to you and give you an answer?
I'd expect that within the next 10 days or so. That would be the norm. But I think that it's probably correct, given the number of agitating vested interests in this, that there will be legal challenge. And therefore I anticipate this will probably return to our courts and maybe go all the way back to the Supreme Court. But if it does, the Supreme Court has clearly laid down a marker as to where it sees the defining requirement of biological sex being the determinant. And I think it would be quite appalling if Northern Ireland was left behind and was left in defiance of what is the highest court in the land.
Given there's still so much uncertainty and ambiguity about this, do you think it was wise for Fermanagh and Omagh District Council to come out and tell us that they're going to be implementing the provisions of the Supreme Court ruling?
I think it was. I think it's right that any public authority in Northern Ireland should give due deference to the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom, of which they are a part. Why wouldn't they? And I certainly would be looking for other public bodies, including those in Stormont, including our Justice Minister. What an example if she were to say that she is not going to follow the ruling of the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom when it comes to biological men and women's prisons or anything else such as which she has at best equivocated about in the past. So I think it does put it up to
we shouldn't jump the gun on that. Belfast City Council have said to us the recent Supreme Court ruling does not apply to Northern Ireland. However, they await guidance from the Equalities Commission for Northern Ireland. They are right in that narrow sense.
They're dancing on the head of a pin. The Supreme Court judgment was about the Equality Act in GB. The Equality Act of GB does not actually apply to Northern Ireland, but we have parallel and equivalent equality provisions, which also talk about men and women, and therefore it would be unconscionable and unthinkable that you'd have a definition of a woman as biologically dictated by biological sex in GB, but dictated by self-identification in another part of the United Kingdom. So I think that is why the Supreme Court ruling will be supremely persuasive if and when there is litigation about what our equality legislation means. I think it's unthinkable, subject to the meddling of the EU. It's unthinkable that any court in Northern Ireland would depart from the Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah. In fairness, I just will read the Department of Justice response on this issue. They say at the moment, the recent ruling by the Supreme Court is a detailed and important judgment. The Department will carefully consider any potential implications, including the Department's responsibilities under Section 75 of the Northern Ireland Act. So it's a similar holding statement to one that other public bodies have given us.
Yes, but it's one they can't dodge. The Justice Minister has been equivocal about biological men in women's prisons. We have, led by our party in the Executive Committee, a crazy pursuit of the Scottish Act, which is the one which was in fact overturned in this judgment, whereby they want to bring in equality provisions equivalent to that. Well, that has just been slapped down by the Supreme Court.
Tim, let me bring
cause the Executive Committee to also scrap the proposals they have.